Hey everyone, you're listening to Cinder Sports. I'm your host, John O'Donnell, and you are listening to my replay of my interview with Paul Hoynes from last week's Cleveland Rocks live show. You can listen to Cinder Sports on the SKO Radio Network live every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on SKORadio.com, the TuneIn app, the Simple Radio app, or any Roku device. Give us a listen and enjoy our interview with Paul as he talks about the Indians, their struggles, and what's next for the team this year.
And now, here is your host, John O'Donnell.
And welcome back to Cinder Sports. I'm your host, John O'Donnell, joined as always by Aaron the Voice K-Back, and the Roving Joe, who is our intern and lost at this time. We'll find him.
We sent him out for Chinese food last night. I think he went to China to go get it.
Hey, he's an effective and efficient young man. He will be back soon. And also joining us soon will be Paul Hoynes. Paul Hoynes is the Indians beat reporter for the Cleveland.com. You can read him in the Plain Dealer. He has covered the Indians for a very long time, and we're looking forward to getting his thoughts on a season that we thought was going to be kind of the summer of Cleveland, right? We thought this team was going to dominate, quite frankly, a very weak division. The AL Central is not great. And we are joined by Paul Hoynes, who is calling in from Chicago and watched a not-so-great game last night. Paul, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Thank you for joining the show. I guess we'll just start off with where the Indians sit. They are about 10 games back of the Minnesota Twins, and they have a lot of issues going on. How surprised are you by this slow start that the Indians are having?
A little bit, but not overwhelmingly so. I mean, with the lack of moves and the moves they made the winter, I mean, they kind of set themselves up for this. I still thought they'd win the division, but they were walking on eggshells. They had to, be perfect to win it, and they're far from perfect, and they got hurt too, with the injuries to Lindor and Kluber and Clevenger. They couldn't afford those because they traded away all their depth and they cut payroll. So, this is, at this point, it's not a surprise because, like you said, they woke up this morning 10.5 games out of first place, and the White Sox they're tied for second place with the White Sox. So not a good situation.
No, and I guess there are a lot of issues. I mean, injuries are going to hopefully heal, and we'll see what happens there. Is there one thing you think the Indians can or should do to get themselves back in this race? A trade they can make, a call up. I know that they've made a couple call ups that are turning out okay. But is there one move that you'd like to see the team make to kind of right the ship, if you will?
Well, they're not going to make any trades. I mean, if they make a trade, it's going to be a fire sale. So,
right.
When they're 10.5 games out, you're not going to bring in a guy to turn your team around. I think they're going to ride this thing out. Maybe they get a little closer. Maybe they, I was talking to Chris Antonetti last week. He said they're setting their sights. They want to get back in the division race, but they're also, looking at the wild card race. And when you're talking wild card race in May, that's a red flag to me. So we'll see about that. But if they make any moves, people are going to be leaving. They're not going to be coming in.
Yeah, and that would be a disappointment, right? I mean, we thought this team was going to compete at least for an AL Central title, and if they fire sale, Kluber goes and what have you, for prospects, that would be disappointing, I think, to Indians fans. Let's just talk about the Twins real quick. I know you've seen them play, covering the Indians. How good is this Twins team? I mean, I'm surprised at how they're performing, but how good are they in your eyes?
Well, Derek Falvey is running the Twins. And he came from the Indians organization, smart guy. And in the era of home runs, Derek Falvey went out and signed home run hitters. Imagine that. He didn't get rid of home run hitters like Edwin Encarnacion and Yonder Alonso. They added Nelson Cruz and Jonathan Shoup and Marwin Gonzalez and a couple other guys, and they're just beating the daylights out of the American League by hitting the long ball. Now, sometimes that can backfire. Power hitters go into slumps, but right now they're one of the best teams in the big leagues, and their pitching, I think, has benefited from an offense that really scores a bunch of runs. I don't think their pitching is great, but when you're scoring 6, 7, 8 runs a game, that covers a lot of sins in the pitching staff.
Yeah, I wish the Indians had that problem scoring 6 or 7, 8 runs a game. We're lucky they scored in a week sometimes. Speaking of the offense, what is wrong with Jose Ramirez? I feel like he's kind of just lost what he had. Is there an injury? Is it a mental thing? Even his fielding seems to be suffering. Like, what's going on with him right now?
Yeah, I don't think he's hurt, because every time he gets on base, he steals a base. So there's nothing wrong with his legs or his arm. There's nothing wrong with his body. I think it's all between the ears. When you go into when you slump starting in the middle of last August and the slump carries over until, going into June right now, that's gonna bother you, right? And I've seen some encouraging signs on this road trip. I think he's starting to drive the ball a little bit. He's not, trying to hit everything 10 miles. And I think obviously the lack of offense, his struggles have hurt him in the field. Like, there's the cardinal sin is you can't carry your offense onto the field. And, I just think, this slump has been so long and has bothered him so much that it's hurting his defense right now as well. But, on this trip, he's hit the ball a little better. So, he has nowhere to go but up.
Well, that's the good news, right? And really this team is that way right now. We're joined by Paul Hoynes of the Cleveland.com. This whole team has a lot of room for improvement. I mean, I look at Oscar Mercado coming up. He's looking like he could be a good ball player. What do you think his ceiling is? Is he going to be somebody that can carry a part of this offensive load? Because he seems to be capable.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great spring.
Yeah.
Went down to Columbus. He hit 296. He hit 400 in spring training. He can run. He can really go get the ball in center field. He's shown I don't think he's got a lot of power, but he's really held his own at the plate. He's made some mistakes, and that's kind of a no-no with Francona. So I don't know. They've got a move coming up here with Tyler Naquin.
Yeah.
On Monday or Tuesday, he's going to come off the disabled list. They got to make a decision there. And I would think, maybe Mercado or Greg Allen are kind of in danger, maybe getting sent down again. But I would hope they don't send, either one of them down. I think if they're going to go young, they got to find out about these guys.
Yeah.
And, let them play.
Yeah, and that's one thing about Terry that's always frustrated me is that young players make mistakes, and his tolerance for those mistakes is so narrow. So he does not like, and I think he reacts too quickly on some of these younger guys. So hopefully he sticks around.
He likes to win.
Well, right now
and rookies will drive you crazy.
They will.
You gotta have a limited supply of rookies, and
that's true.
A guy like Willie Mays, maybe. one at a time. One rookie per year, and then have the rest of the roster with all-stars.
You heard Paul Hoynes say it. Oscar Mercado is the new Willie Mays. No, I'm just teasing, Paul. Hey, real quick before I let you go here, one of the things that I was excited about, and still am, is the All-Star game here in Cleveland. And I think this, again, was supposed to be the summer of Cleveland. The Indians would do well, the All-Star game's here. What is the current level of excitement for the All-Star game here in Cleveland? You think the team's struggles have kind of dampened that a little bit?
I don't think so. I think, the All-Star game is about all 30 teams. It's about, people from all over the country coming to Cleveland. I think it's more about Cleveland, I think, than the Indians. The Indians have, the last couple of years have had 4, 5, 6 guys on the All-Star team.
Right.
I don't think they're going to have that many this year. But, Terry Francona will be on the All-Star staff. Sandy Alomar will be an All-Star ambassador. And they'll have 1 or 2 players, I would think. But the All-Star game is a celebration of baseball. It's not about one team or one struggling team. It's a chance, for the Indians to show off Progressive Field, which they've put so much money into, and still a beautiful ballpark. And the city, the All-Star game is so cool now. It's like a whole week of it's just fun stuff, starting with the Futures game on Sunday, with all the prospects, and guys like Francisco Lindor and Grady Sizemore, Tristan McKenzie have all appeared in that game, and Indians guys, and the home run derby has become bigger than the game almost, and then on that's on Monday, and then Tuesday's the All-Star game, but it's fun. It's a great experience, and like I said, it draws people from all over the country, all over the world, really.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It is a celebration of baseball. I just wish we would have had the chance, like, to see Jose Ramirez be hot, be in the home run derby. That hometown player being in the derby is a big deal. We saw Bryce Harper, and we're just not going to have that this year, I don't think. And I think that's a shame. But you're right. Overall, I think the game is going to be awesome. The weekend is going to be awesome, and I'm looking forward to it. Real quick before I let you go, Paul, we saw that incident in Houston with the young girl that was hit by a baseball. I talked about it earlier in the show. Would you like to see nets extended down the foul lines here to prevent that kind of thing from happening? Do you think baseball is looking at something like that?
I sure hope so. I've been a proponent of extending the nets for years. I don't understand why you would invite your fans to a ballpark, have them sit down for 2 or 3 hours to enjoy a game, and put them in danger. I expose them to a 90-mile-an-hour foul ball when there's means to protect them, or a broken bat. It makes no sense to me. And every time I see a foul ball go into the stands, I cringe, especially when you see young kids, down, running around the ballpark, and they're not paying attention.
No.
And it's just a kind of a recipe for disaster. I was glad when the Indians extended the screening down to the ends of the dugout in 2018, and I think they should take it out right to the foul poles.
Agreed.
I don't think there's even a question about that.
Agreed. And then lastly, I want to get your thoughts on this. Bill Buckner passed, and I think it's a shame. We'll always remember Bill Buckner for the mistake he made in the World Series, right? The Indians have had their share of heartbreak, right? And unlike the Red Sox, we don't have a World Series to kind of wash it away. You've been following the Indians for a really long time. What memory kind of sticks out to you as the almost won it moment for the Indians? Is it the 16? Is it the Jose Mesa? What's your biggest memory there in terms of almost winning a championship?
I think I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's the freshest. It's Rajah Davis. Davis's home run, game-tying home run in the eighth inning, 7th or 8th inning in Game 7 in 2016 against the Cubs. I thought that's a moment that I could, that's a moment where you could almost you could take that moment to the grave and not, even if the Indians never win a World Series. I think that was a moment to remember, and I just remember in 1997 in Miami, when they lost Game 7 in 11 innings, and going down in that locker room, and just the exhaustion from those players. Everybody was they were just drained. It was, they'd played 19 postseason games. They'd gone to Game 7, and then they go to extra innings in Game 7 and lose it. And I just remember, the effort that it took just to get that far, and so much disappointment that they lost it.
Yeah, and it's funny as you're telling me those moments, I'm going back to as a fan reliving those myself, and now I'm going to be in a deep depression all day. I appreciate that. Paul,
I think Cleveland fan. To me, I think it's the journey is more important than the end result.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So
but a lot of people don't feel that way, but that's how I feel.
And I agree, and I enjoy reading you writing about the journey in Cleveland.com. You're a great writer. You've been great to spend all this time with us. One final question. Positive attitude. How do the Indians compete for a playoff spot? And when we're talking again a few months down the road, are we going to be winning the AL Central? Tell me we're going to do it, Paul.
I can't tell you that we're going to. I can't tell you they're going to do that. I really can't.
Yeah, it's a long road.
The way this team is constructed, I doubt it. And maybe the wild card, but the wild card is a swamp. You don't want to get in there because you can play your heart out and you're gone in one game. The division title's got to be their goal, but they're a long way away from that right now.
Well, let's hope you and I are both wrong, and we can laugh about that next time we talk. Paul, again, thank you for getting up early with us in Chicago. Enjoy the weekend in the Windy City, and then we'll talk again soon. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.
And that was Paul Hoynes of Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealer. It is amazing. The one thing that sticks out from that is what he said, the journey. And I know you, Aaron, as a sports fan, maybe not baseball, but the journey as a fan is always so much more rewarding than actually winning that championship.
I'll tell you, when he was talking about 16 and that game 7, I remember I was working from home, and I was working a second shift job, and my office is on one side of the upstairs, and my bedroom is on the other, and my wife had that game on. So I'm sitting here, I'm listening for my phone to ring while I'm trying to watch the game. And it rang maybe once a half an hour. So I'm watching this game, the phone rings, I'm like, damn. So I go answer the phone, I help the person out, I come back, I'm like, what happened? Yeah. And it's that kind of thing. I think back to 97 and Jose Mesa coming in the 9th and just handing that game away.
Edgar Renteria. I hate Edgar Renteria to this day, and that base hit that I could have fielded through the middle, but at any rate. Right. And I actually want to talk about 16, but I want to open up the phone lines. If you're listening, we've got about 10, 12 minutes before break. Give us a call, 234-200-5110. I know there's been people trying to get through. Appreciate the love. We're going to open up the phone lines now, and we will open them up again after our interview with Chris Fedor at the bottom of hour 2. My story about 16 is I think interesting. My family goes to Disney every year. We go with oftentimes go with a dear friend of ours, and we'll call him Matt to not name names on the radio, but Matt and I were watching Game 7, and he is not an Indians fan. He is also a terrible human being and was picking on us mercilessly. And now
I go to Disney with him, but he's a terrible human being.
And you
would think Disney would change that.
He's a handsome fella. He's 6'5", has a goatee, dark hair. He's a handsome fella. We often got mistaken for brothers, growing up and being buddies, but terrible human being because he just picks and picks and picks. And of course he was rooting for the Cubs just to irritate me.
Right.
And then Rajay Davis hits a home run and I go absolutely nuts, except I'm in a house with 5 sleeping children. So by going nuts, I'm air punching and screaming at the top of my lungs with no voice. I'm just yelling, mouthing yelling. It had to be the funniest thing in the world. And then of course we lost anyway. So.
I've got an air punching story for you when we go on a break.
Who doesn't?
This is a beautiful one, but I did want to touch on one thing that we kind of glazed over here as far as the Indians are. I was kind of looking back to how they've been doing. Previous years, they've been able to really manhandle the AL Central and really struggled against just about every other division in baseball.
Yeah.
You're seeing a paradigm shift now where they can beat teams like Baltimore, like Toronto, like Boston.
Yeah.
And they get manhandled by the AL Central.
Yeah. Well,
they cannot do that if they want to compete. I don't see an AL Central title if they're going to continue this trend. And if you're thinking wild card, remember, you're going to fight the Yankees and the Red Sox for that spot.
Yeah. No.
Not a good place to be.
And Paul touched on it, and it's something I want to get into more another time, which is the paradigm shift in all of baseball. Mm-hmm. The Twins went out and signed Nelson Cruz, and I remember when they did that, everybody said, well, Nelson Cruz is nothing but a home run and a strikeout. He's a hole in the lineup. That is what baseball is now, and I don't like it. I don't like that we're swinging for the fences, and the teams that are winning are basically the teams that can hit the most home runs. That's not what baseball is to me. But it is what baseball is now. Mm-hmm. And we have, and the Indians, Paul struck on it. They had to be perfect. You got rid of Yandy Diaz. You got rid of Encarnacion, Michael Brantley. Michael Brantley is tearing it up for the Astros. And I understand he wanted to move on. The team wanted to move on, but you gotta bring in other hitters. You know, when they brought in Encarnacion, it was because they'd gotten rid of Alonso. And they didn't bring anybody in. And I love Oscar Mercado. I do. But then you've got Bowers as our DH batting 200 with like 2 or 3 home runs. Mm-hmm. He's horrible. He's horrible. You look at this lineup. Here's the lineup. Lindor, Mercado, Santana. Now, Kipnis, we would all say, oh, Jason Kipnis. Jason Kipnis has batted 200 for the last 3 years. He's washed up.
Yeah.
Jose Ramirez. Okay, last year Jose Ramirez in May 30th was batting 300 with a 1.03 OPS. That's what is that? OPS.
On base percentage.
On base percentage plus slugging. So he was ripping the cover off the ball. And he had 18 home runs. Now he's batting 209 with a 6.23 OPS, and he has very few home runs. And the point is, he's not good. Bowers, not a good hitter. Allen, not a good hitter. Plawecki, not a good hitter. I don't even know if he's a Major League Baseball player, but apparently he is. He's the catcher. And Leonis Martin. Okay. That is not a good lineup. That just is not a good lineup. There's no pop in that lineup other than Lindor and Santana. And if Santana wasn't having the year he's having a fantastic year. If he wasn't having the year he was having, this lineup would just be absolutely awful. And it's not good as it is, but it would be absolutely awful. Look at last year. Lindor, Brantley, Ramirez, Encarnacion, Alonso, Melky Cabrera, then Kipnis, Gomes, and Allen. There were 6 professional hitters in that lineup last year. There might be 2 or 3 this year.
I'm spacing on the name, but when I tell you this, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. We had an outfielder, big, tall drink of water, always loved to run into the walls, and got himself injured a handful of times.
Richie Sexton?
No.
Okay.
More recent.
Well, I don't know. We're talking the 70s, the 80s?
No, last year.
Oh, last year. I don't know who that is.
I'm going to have to dig deep here, but I'm thinking of that because I'm looking at our current roster. He's not even on the roster.
No.
And he was another one of those where it's like,
Tyler Nagle?
he was great in the field,
yeah.
And we need defense.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. We need people that can not only catch but throw.
Grady Sizemore?
No.
I used to love Grady Sizemore. I was at Grady Sizemore's first Major League game. And look, here's the other thing. The injuries are not helping. And,
right.
And Paul mentioned that too. The injuries are not helping. Having Kluber get hurt, not good. But Kluber, before he was hurt, was not good. He's been struggling all year. Clevenger, that was devastating because he was absolutely lights out. He had 22 strikeouts in his 12 innings that he did pitch, and he was throwing BBs. And now with that back injury, you wonder, okay, he's going to come back, but how effective is he going to be? And if Carrasco would stop eating cookies and live up to his nickname Cookie, we might be a little better off. He's got a 276 batting average. Mm-hmm. The pitching just isn't what it needed to be. And again, we're talking about an era where hitting is dominating baseball, and we're relying on guys like Shane Bieber, and Trevor Bauer to carry this team, and a lineup just isn't good enough to win. It just isn't good enough to win. And that is a very frustrating thing for Indians fans. We aren't winning the wild card. Paul mentioned it. We're not winning the wild card. We're just not. And then we're not going to beat the Twins either, unfortunately. And again, this is where the finger gets pointed for me. The front office. I understand how baseball works. Financially, we were in the hole to start with. Mm-hmm. Okay. Revenue sharing in baseball is the worst compared to the other sports. The other sports have national TV contracts that generate a lot of revenue. And as a result, teams don't really even need to do much to make money. They just get national revenue from TV contracts and broadcasting contracts. Baseball's not that way. It's largely a regional thing. There's not a lot of national baseball contracts. We see some on ESPN, but not like we do for football and the NBA. As a result, a team like the Indians and other mid-market teams, the Twins are in this boat. Kansas City Royals are in this boat. They don't have as much money as the Yankees, who have the Yes Network and can just generate millions and millions and millions of dollars and spend that. So you have to do things correctly from a financial standpoint. But when you have an owner basically telling us that they're not going to sign Lindor, then you have to make what moves you can. And they could have made more moves.
Yeah.
I get that the financial situation is tight. I understand how it works. But you have to win games to drive attendance. They're not doing it. And this is the end of the run. I just feel like Paul kind of hinted at it. I think a fire sale is coming after the All-Star break. I think they're going to sell off Kluber, Ramirez, and a number of other players.
Bradley Zimmer, who's what I was thinking of.
Oh, I didn't even know he played baseball for a living.
Almost. Like I said, a great fielder, a lousy hitter.
Hey, he's Mr. and Mrs. Zimmer's favorite player.
Thanks.
We are up against the break at the top of the hour. When we come back, we are going to have Rick Carpenter, my co-host from Bad Friend Choices, join the show. We're going to talk Browns. We're going to talk Cavs. We're going to talk the NBA Finals. Don't miss that. We are Cinder Block Sports, and we will be right back.